Howdy, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Preparedness Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best in preparedness information. You can find us online at thepreparednesspodcast.com. My name is Rob Hannes, and I'm the host for the show, and you can reach me through email at rob@prepcast.info. You know, if you're a subscriber to the podcast through iTunes, when you get a chance, do me a favor and fill out a rating in iTunes for the podcast. I would appreciate that because that's how other people find the podcast. And if you can put a review there, you know, give it a little star rating of you know, how you rate it and what you think about it, that kind of gives people an idea of what they can expect with the podcast. I'm hoping that you'll give me a favorable review, like a 5-star review. That would be super sweet. But I would, you know, encourage you to be as honest as possible. Also, if you have any prep questions, go ahead and email me at rob@prepcast.info. We've done a couple of those lately, and I think they went pretty well. And I think this is an opportunity for me to kind of, you know, address some of the questions that you have. So, you know, don't be shy. Go ahead and send them in. Now, if I get deluged with a ton of questions, I'll do my best to either answer them in email or on the podcast. But go ahead and send them on in. This podcast is going to be about current events for the week of October 14th, 2012. Now, before I go over the current events and news for this week, I want to mention that just because I provide a link to a website, that in no way means that I endorse the political views or any of the opinions on that website. I simply pull out the information where I find the information. And quite honestly, the information is sometimes all over the place and sometimes in only very few select websites. So I don't really waste a lot of time trying to find a political neutral or some other non-offensive site. I just go with what I got because otherwise it takes too much time. So sometimes this means that the information might be on a pro-Democrat site, it might be on a pro-Republican or a pro-Libertarian, or it could be on a pro-nobody, throw all the bums out website. So just look past that. I'm not trying to send any hidden messages. In fact, quite honestly, I don't think we have time for politics. You know, voting's important. Vote your conscience, but get right back to prepping because time is short, especially in terms of the economy. Now, the first article I want to bring to your attention is about the petrodollar. I found a really good explanation of what the petrodollar is and how it fits into the global economy and how it basically props up our economy. And again, all these links are in the show notes. I don't even try to actually give out the URL because otherwise I'd be doing this all the time. You know, http://www.againstcronycapitalism.org/2012/10/ an excellent explanation of the petrodollar system with dashes instead of spaces between all those words. Egads, who has time for that? So just go to the show notes and you'll be able to click through to all the articles that we're talking about here. Anyways, this was an article, I don't remember the reporter's name, but it was on Fox 19, which I have no idea what city that is. But you can see the video. It looks like it's a video from the newscast, and I found this in another article on the againstcronycapitalism.org website. But the video itself, I mean, you could read the little story that goes with it, but the video itself is very good, and it very succinctly explains what the petrodollar is, how it came to be, and why it's important to us. The next article, I call this kind of like declining trends. This article is a very interesting article and has some really informative charts. It's really the charts that I want you to see. It's over on mybudget360.com. There are 3 charts there. The first chart is the U.S. dollar trend, or the U.S. dollar index trend. And it goes all the way back to, let's say, 1975. And it has these little gray bars that mark all the recessions. So you can see where the recessions were and what the index for the U.S. dollars. Now, the U.S. dollar index is an indicator of how the dollar is performing against other currencies. And basically, what we see here is it peaked about 1985. Well, okay, let me backtrack just a little bit. The a dollar index of 100 is about what you could say is normal. It's about what we'd expect if everybody had equal currency. So from about early 1970s to just before 1980, it was about 100, maybe a little bit above. Then it was in the mid 90s through like 1981-ish. And then it shot up really high around 1985. And then it basically came right back down to the same place it was in the mid 90s. And that was about, according to this chart, a little bit before 1990, say maybe 1988. Since then, though, there's been a downward trend through 1995 where it hit 80. Starting in a little bit early 1995, we'll say, it started going up through the early 2000s to about 2002, which would be one of the recessions we had, which I believe was the dot-com bust, that bubble that bust with all the internet properties and stuff. And basically, since then, it's been declining. Now, it hit rock bottom at the beginning of the last recession, and then it kind of shot up a little bit. The bottom was about 70, and then it shot up to the mid-80s, and it's been kind of trickling down ever since, and right now it's in the low 70s. Now, the U.S. dollar index is important because, well, honestly, I'm not an economist. I don't equate or run algorithms like this. However, what they're saying, and when I say they, I mean the people who I follow, like Jim Sinclair and Peter Schiff and stuff like that, they are saying that basically when the dollar index gets to 72 and stays there, that's an indicator to the world and the investors that the dollar has become very weak. And it's at that point, or thereabouts, that we can really start to see a decline of the dollar. And some of them are saying that we could see it go as low as 50 or 52 or something like that. This is not good. I mean, the dollar index is how strong the dollar is competing against other currencies. If you were to go to Canada in the early 1980s, it was great because, the dollar bought way more than what their dollar did. We got a lot more dollars, Canadian dollars, than for U.S. dollars. And so it was great to be in a foreign country. Now, foreigners are coming here because their currency is stronger and our currency is weaker. So it's not so good for us to travel abroad because our money doesn't buy as much. That's one of the aspects of a declining and eroding dollar. The next chart on this page is the manufacturing employees. It's basically the number of manufacturing employees we have in this country. And it's almost like a bell curve where it's kind of domed. Starting in the 1940s, it shoots up, and then it has up and downs, but it trends up all the way through about 1980, and then it starts trending downward. Well, once we hit 2000, it starts to nearly plummet, and that's where we're at right now. We are back to a manufacturing base that is approximately 1945-ish, which is not good, which means we're not making a lot of things here in America, which means we're not able to compete globally. We don't make anything that people want. It's very hard for us to actually sell goods on the global market, which is not good for our economy. Countries that have a very large manufacturing base usually have very strong economies. Take a look at China. China is making a lot of the stuff that we buy. They're making the goods. And look at what China's economy has done. It has skyrocketed. Now, they are having other issues there as far as being able to keep their economy growing, because as we become poorer in this country, we're buying less stuff. And that is having a global impact. However, the average Chinese family has seen an increase in the standard of living because they're able to get these manufacturing jobs, and it's kind of like an industrial revolution that we had in this country. You could equate it to what they're seeing over there. But the point is, countries that make stuff have better economies. Countries that don't make anything have very weak economies, or their economies are unstable. They can't sustain growth very long because there's nothing to really grow. It's just a matter of, service jobs, and service-oriented jobs are very easy to outsource someplace else. And I think we've seen that over the past few years. Now, the third chart on this page is it's the not in the labor force rate, which it's rather difficult. It's a rather difficult chart to understand, but if you look at it from the viewpoint that this is the rate at which people are dropping out of the labor pool, and if you look at it, you'll see it's trending upwards, which is not good, because the labor pool is those people that are available to work and are looking for jobs. This is what's important, because this is what the employment rate is tied to, is whether or not people are looking for jobs. So as people are dropping out of this labor pool, it can make the unemployment rate look better, but it's really not, and we need to keep that in mind. The third item I want to talk about is the record high enrollment for food stamps at almost 47 million people. Now, if you couple this with the fact that we have a record number of people on government assistance in general, 46 million, or it's actually closer to 47 million, are just on food stamps. That doesn't include, any sort of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, none of that. It's just the food stamp program. That's 14.8% of Americans. Now, back in December of 2008, shortly after I started the Preparedness podcast, I made a blog post about how there were 31.5 million Americans on food stamps. And that, at that time, that was up. I mean, it was amazing, because it was up from the 29.9 million back in 2005. Now, keep that in mind. 2005 is only 7 years ago. We're not talking like 17 years or a couple decades. We're only talking 7 years. So back then, it was about 1 out of every 10 Americans getting food stamps. Now it's more than 1 out of 7 people are on food stamps. And quite honestly, there's no end in sight for this. It just keeps getting worse. Now, this is one of those political sites that I had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, and they're trying to make an issue about when Obama got in and how many more people are in the food stamp enrollment. Well, quite honestly, this single administration is not responsible for all the issues that have happened in the last 4 years. It has been a foundation that's been set for decades now. And we've covered some of this, but the important thing that I want to point out is that the amount of people that are having issues making ends meet is increasing, and it's increasing every year. So if the debt's increasing and the number of people that need assistance because they can't make ends meet is increasing, and just looking at those two alone, how is it possible that we have unemployment dropping? And again, these are indicators. These are red flags that you need to look at and project forward of where we think the economy is going to go and how this is going to affect us. And when we come back from a couple messages from our sponsors, I'm going to actually talk about how we can look into the future and look at other countries and see what very may well be in store for America.
Charlie McGrath of WideAwakeNews.com here with a message about Legacy Premium freeze-dried storable food, available at BuyEmergencyFoods.com. I recently returned from a trip to the manufacturing facility, and I'm here to tell you it was impressive. Over 50 employees working hard to produce the highest quality, best tasting, most healthy, certified GMO-free freeze-dried storable food on the market. And now that I've been to the manufacturing facility, I can tell you, from receiving to production to shipping, these guys have one thing in mind. That is quality. Plain and simple. Please do yourself, do your loved ones a favor. Be prepared for an uncertain future with Legacy Premium freeze-dried storable foods available at BuyEmergencyFoods.com. You can call them at 888-543-7345. That number again, 888-543-7345, or better yet, visit them online at buyemergencyfoods.com.
Thanks, Charlie. The other podcast sponsor I want to cover tonight is FlyingEagleGold.com. Now, you've heard me talk about Jeff and his great grasp of historical perspectives on gold and silver and how he can help you, create a plan of being able to preserve your wealth. However, tonight I want to talk to you about a very special deal that Jeff has for the listeners of the Preparedness Podcast, and it's only for the listeners of the Preparedness Podcast. Right now, Jeff is sitting on 30 pieces of 1/10 ounce American Eagle gold coins. I've seen these coins. They're beautiful. This means that you can buy gold at, honestly, a reasonable price, because if you buy it at the 1 ounce gold coin rate, you're going to be paying well over $1,700 an ounce. Right now, Jeff has got these coins for $202 per coin. You can buy one or you can buy all 30. It is a first come, first serve, but this is a somewhat unique opportunity because Jeff is not he's not a coin dealer. He doesn't have coins sitting on the shelf, and this is why he can get you the best prices on the market, because he doesn't have to worry about inventory. He doesn't worry about covering his costs if he bought a little bit higher, a little bit lower. When you go to buy with Jeff, he's going to go out and he's going to find you the best deal. If you want to buy 1 coin or 10 coins or, a gold bar or whatever it is, he's going to go out and find you the best deal he can right then. And while I know some people find that kind of weird, it actually is. It works out well because he gets you the best price he can. However, right now he actually has these gold coins. I don't want to say in stock because he doesn't keep stock, but he has them on hand right now. He's ready to move. Whether you buy 1 coin or all 30 coins, it's an $8 flat rate shipping. So $202 per coin for a 1/10 ounce American Eagle gold coin. I've seen these. These things are beautiful. And let me tell you, when you get this coin in your hand, you're going to have this feeling of, I don't want to say pride, but it's going to be a very good feeling knowing that this is real money. You clink it on the table and it sounds like real money, not the hollow stuff that we have for coins today. This is a really great opportunity for those of you who have been waiting to start to adding gold and precious metals to your preparedness plan. These 1/10 ounce coins allow you to, buy a little bit at a time. They're $202 per coin. This is, again, a great opportunity for Preparedness Podcast listeners only. So when you call Jeff at 623-327-1778, let him know that you're a podcast listener and that you're interested in the 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagle coins. Again, he only has 30 on hand, and it's a first come, first served basis. For more information, you can go to FlyingEagleGold.com or call Jeff directly. The next thing I want to talk about is Spain's credit downgrade. They were downgraded again to a BBB- status. This is like one downgrade away from junk status. This basically means Spain doesn't have any credit. It's kind of like you not being able to go out and buy a car or get a home loan because your credit stinks. This is the same thing. Now, what I want you to do is when you read this, and it's not really an article, it's one of those Business Insiders. They got these little like blocks of text with a picture sort of thing. It's supposed to be kind of like a photo essay, but anyways, go through it, and I want you to replace the word Spain with U.S., Catalonia with Texas, and ECB, which is the European Central Bank, with the Fed. And what you're going to be reading is a future news article about the United States. In a nutshell, what this article is going over is, Spain's economy tanks even more. The recession deepens. The government is going to enact more austerity. Unemployment is going to rise. They're going to have more and more protests. They're going to have Catalonia, which we'll call Texas, secede. The housing prices continue to plummet. Gold bonds continue to soar. Boy, this sounds really familiar, doesn't it? Well, you know what? This is what's going to happen when inflation really kicks in. And all these angry people are going to take to the street looking for answers, and they're going to strike out because they have no other venue to address their grievances. this is what's going to happen. We've already started to see this already. So it's not really that much of a stretch. But right now, it's kind of staying under wraps. What happens in California, you may not hear anyplace else, or what happens in Ohio or Florida, you might not hear across the nation because they're trying to keep it under wraps. But eventually, it's going to blow up. So if you put two together, I think you're going to know why all these federal agencies have been buying massive amounts of ammo and food. Think about that one. This next article I have highlighted is from Jack Welch, and it's an article that he basically comes out and says, I was right about that jobs report. And if you've been following this latest unemployment report that came out that basically said unemployment dropped to 7.8%, you know that there are a lot of people that are really highly skeptical about how valid that report is. And quite honestly, I don't believe it because I don't really want to get political, but in my opinion, there's no way the jobless rate can drop that low that fast. And this article by Jack Welch really sums up why. And I think it's important to keep this in perspective because, the economy is not some magical, mythical entity or object that just, it's like a magic 8-ball. You turn it over, you get a different answer. It doesn't work that way. There are very specific mechanisms that happen in the economy, and this and this and this happen, we know this will probably happen, and if this and this and this don't happen, then we know what's going to happen based on certain aspects of the economy. And I don't really want to drag into this any deeper, but I think it's important to understand that a lot of times what we're being told is not the truth, and we have to dig deeper, or we have to follow our gut to know that, you know what, Joe and Bob and Sue and Tom and Steve all say that the economy's fine and the housing prices are going up and everything is really almost sunshine and lollipops, but yet your gut says, I don't think so. You need to follow your gut, and this is one of those articles I'm providing to kind of say, yeah, see, your gut was right. Investors should fear the moment when a loaf of bread costs $3 billion. This is a good article about the pending hyperinflation, particularly in how it describes the inability to actually see it coming. Now, I don't think they were talking about preppers in this article when they said the inability to see things coming, and I'm not even sure if they actually said those words, but that's basically what they're referring to is how it takes a while for these economic mechanisms to kind of fall in place, and it catches people off guard. Much like the recession of just a few years ago, economists didn't see that coming. And so likewise, they're not expecting hyperinflation. However they're working their models, they're not seeing it. So I think this is an interesting aspect of the article because it had one part in there, and I wanted to read this, and it's about how, let me just go ahead and read it. In 1914, before World War I, a loaf of bread in Germany cost the equivalent of 13 cents. 2 years later, it was 19 cents. And by 1919, that's 5 years later, after the war, that same loaf of bread was 27 cents, doubling the pre-war price in 5 years. Bad, yes, but not alarming. But 1 year later, a German loaf of bread cost $1.20. By mid-1922, it was $3.50. Just 6 months later, a loaf cost $700. And by the spring of 1923, it was $1,200. As of September, it cost $2 million to buy that loaf of bread. 1 month later, it cost $670 million. And the month after that, it was $3 billion. Within weeks, it was $100 billion, at which point the German mark completely collapsed. Now, the whole time the German government kept printing more money, so much so that people burned it in their fireplaces because it was cheaper than wood. Why didn't they just stop and try to stabilize the currency? When things began to disintegrate, no one dared to take away the punch bowl. They feared shutting off the monetary heroin would lead to riots, civil war, and worst of all, communism. So realizing that they were doing the destructive, they kept doing it out of fear that stopping would be even more destructive. Does that sound familiar at all? It does to me. When you look at certain prices right now, say gasoline, and you look at what it was 4 years ago, this is very similar. You know, we're having riots right now. We're having people that are PO'd right now about the economy. We have a lot of people out of work. They're disgruntled and they're angry and they're looking a place to vent. So maybe they don't want to make it worse and think that if they just kind of blind their eyes to the inevitable, and actually in this country what happens is that, you know, they hope they can push it off for their term until somebody else is left holding the bag, and then, you know, they get off scot-free because they're no longer into the system. They're no longer a politician on the hill, so to speak. But this is how it happens. And so when you're saying, hey, why doesn't somebody do something about it? Well, it's because they know that to do the right thing or to take whatever measures they need to take in order to fix it is going to hurt more than continuing to do what they're doing now, or at least it's going to hurt more sooner than if we just keep going on and pretending that everything's fine. I bring this up because you need to keep this in mind, because I think this is what's happening right now. I think we are in the beginning stages of hyperinflation, and I think the next few years we're going to see it get worse and worse. And I think that very specifically because of the way the economy is, the way the debt crisis is, the way the government keeps spending and printing and spending and printing. Every country that has ever done this goes into hyperinflation. I think it would be foolhardy to think that we're not going to be, or I should say, we're going to be the only country in the history of currency to not go into hyperinflation when doing the same thing that everybody else has done that has led to hyperinflation. Now, there are some mitigating factors here. We are the global reserve currency. The U.S. dollar is the petrodollar right now. However, that can change in nearly a blink of an eye. And when that does, that is going to be, well, if we're not already in hyperinflation, I think that's going to be the catalyst that really kind of tips us over the edge. I don't know how long this is going to take, but again, you need to be ready for it. We got time. We may be at the start of it. You know, by this time next year, I don't know. We may be well into hyperinflation. I don't know, but I do know that it's not going to be. We're not going to wake up Monday and suddenly, everything costs 10 times more. We have time to prepare. You have time to prepare. You may not be able to do everything you want to do, but start with the basics. Make sure you've got food storage. Make sure you've got a way to make clean water. Make sure you got a way to defend yourself. Make sure you have a way to keep your family warm. For most of the country that has winters, you're going to need to have a way to keep warm if there's no heat. Because when things get expensive, that's what austerity is. When the government says austerity, they start cutting costs. They start with social programs, but utilities usually get lumped in there as well. So these are the things you need to be prepared for. Now, we talk about a lot of bad stuff on this podcast, or potentially bad stuff, and unfortunately, that's kind of what being prepared is you're preparing for potentially bad stuff to happen. However, I want to end this podcast on a positive note today. Last Sunday, October 14th, Felix Baumgartner broke the world record for the highest skydive ever. This was amazing. Baumgartner put science, space, and exploration discovery back into the imagination of kids everywhere. After taking a 2.5-hour balloon ride up to just over 24 miles into the air, he stepped out of his capsule and he jumped back to Earth. Not only did he break the record for the highest skydive jump, he also broke the highest manned balloon altitude, and he also had the fastest skydive at 833 miles per hour, which is well past the speed of sound at Mach 1.4. Now, my wife and kids watched this. Now, it was like a 2.5, actually I think it was like a 3-hour show sponsored by Red Bull, and it was really cool. Now, I didn't see the beginning of it when they launched the balloon. I kind of came in, I think, about the first half hour when he was just starting to rise up in the helium balloon, and it took like another 2 hours for him to get up there. And it was pretty cool. We didn't really watch every minute of that, but when he got towards the point where he's going to jump, they didn't know how high the balloon was going to go. We all went in the TV room and we watched it, and it felt like one of those, NASA space projects of a rocket liftoff or the man on the moon, because you didn't know it was going to happen. We didn't know how high the balloon was going to go. And as the balloon rose, it was a great opportunity for me to explain to my kids how, gas and pressure works and stuff, because the balloon kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It started off as this really skinny sort of, bubble with a tail on it. And when he jumped, it was this massive, massive round balloon with this little itty bitty, capsule underneath of it. And he gets up there and they go through the checklist and stuff. And I thought it was really cool that Joe Kittner, who had the previous record for highest skydive, was actually helping Felix with his checklist and going through and helping him break the record, which I thought was really cool. But he steps out in this little itty bitty ledge and, in about the span of a breath, jumps off. And it was, the photography was great. We had these really long lenses so you could see the capsule, you could see him falling, and he's kind of tumbling and stuff. And it was like all the information and all the science that went into it and everything, all the data that we got from it was amazing. And it was a really great opportunity for me to explain science to my kids in a variety of ways. The communication and the fact that at 63,000 feet, that's the point where the human body has to have a pressurized spacesuit, because body temperature will boil body fluids and stuff, and the fact that you need oxygen and air and pressure. It was great to sit down on Sunday morning and watch this, and he landed safe, which was way cool as well. But it was a great exploration of breaking records and breaking barriers and stuff, and I just wanted to say it was really cool. We haven't had a real a space moment in a long time, and not that this was really into space, but this did open the door for people who are working in near space or near Earth orbit, where if something happens, they could jump out and jump their way back to safety onto Earth. Now we know. We didn't know what happened to a human body that was not in a vehicle when it hit the speed of sound. We had no idea what would really happen. Now we know. And so just all this science and you think, it's a publicity stunt, but it was way more than this, and it was really cool. And it got my kids like science anyways, but they be able to see stuff like this was just very, very cool. And so if you have not seen the video of that, I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube someplace, and I wouldn't necessarily say you have to watch the whole 3 hours of it, but watch when he jumps and he comes down to Earth. It was pretty exciting. It was a really cool event, and I was glad to be able to share that with my kids. Well, this podcast went a little bit longer than I expected. I was hoping to get 20 minutes, and it looks like I'm going to pull 35 minutes out of there. I want to thank you for downloading and listening to the podcast. I really do appreciate it. You can reach me through the website at thepreparednesspodcast.com. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/preparednesspodcast. We're on Twitter as Prepcast. And, of course, you can always email me at rob@prepcast.info. If you have any prep questions, go ahead and send them on in. Thanks for listening, and until next time, folks, make sure you enjoy life and be safe.